The episode begins with Clay face the shape-shifting monster. He was hosting a live single-man concert. However, most of the seats were seen to be empty. The next day, he read the papers with hopes that his concert made the front page. He was disappointed when he read his concert was a total flop. Meanwhile, Professor Woodrue transforms into a full vine after the accident. He called out to Ivy that he was coming to take his revenge. Ivy wakes up and realized she had been dreaming. She goes to the kitchen to grab a coffee. Harley Quinn shows her the paper where she was called a freak for killing the professor in an accident. Ivy then explained to Harley that she killed the professor in the same way he tried to kill her. Harley was furious about Ivy not mentioning it to her. However, Ivy tells Harley she has a presentation at the Green Initiative. She pleads with Harley that it would mean a lot to her if she shows up, and she leaves the room. Lois' manager, Perry White, was taking it out on her, demanding to find out what was fishy about the lab accident. Then suddenly, Clayface barged into the room, demanding to see the editor-in-chief. He tells Perry the reviews on the paper were causing damage to his theater, and he needs to get a good one. Perry tells him the only way he was going to get excellent reviews is if Clayface writes them by himself. Ivy arrived at the school for the Green Initiative and began to give her speech. Harley walked in while she was still speaking. However, Ivy wasn't feeling well, as she kept hearing Jason's voice in her head telling her it wasn't over. She couldn't hold it any longer. She had to run out of the class. Harley runs after her to know what was wrong. Ivy tells her she was losing her mind. However, Harley suggested they want to get lunch together, but Ivy turned down the offer, saying she wasn't hungry and needs to go into the green to meditate. Ivy went in a quiet room and ventured into the green world. She was about taking a nap when a little flower pops up. It led her to a big oak tree in the middle of the garden. Suddenly, the sky grew dark and a creature begins to emerge from inside the tree. It turns out to be Jason, who has turned into a monster and calls himself the Floronic Man. The gases and the vines mixed in the lab was what turned him into the monster. He and Ivy then got into a fight. However, he was much stronger than Ivy, and he seized her by the throat. Meanwhile, Harley walked up to the door and was calling out to Ivy. Suddenly, a vine breaks out from the window. Harley breaks the door open and sees Ivy being strangled by the vines. Meanwhile, Clayface captured Perry White in a box. He took him to his apartment, and he begins to write his review. He realized he wasn't able to put the words together and needs a literal giant. He reached out to Bane, who came along. He tells Bane he needs his expertise in writing while Clayface tells his story. Bane writes the review. After the review was ready, Clayface transforms into Perry White and was going to publish the review. Meanwhile, Harley Quinn was trying her best to get Ivy out of the vines, but her efforts proved abortive. She called out to Frank, who was having a nap. Frank sees Ivy struggling with the vines, and he went into the green to take a look. He sees Ivy and Jason were in the midst of a fight, and Jason was in the lead. He returned to Harley and informs her about Jason taking it out on Ivy in the green. He tells her to find the physical body of Jason and torch it down as soon as possible, while he went back to help Ivy. In the meanwhile, Clayface was at the Daily Planet posed as Perry. He praised Bane in front of everyone about the Clayface Theater review. Lois Lane later informs him about a sighting of a spacecraft looking like a skull flying around Metropolis, and she needs his order to write about it. Bane walked in at the moment, and Clayface introduced him as the new lead columnist. Meanwhile, Floronic Man was taking it out on Ivy in the green. Just then, Frank showed up to defend Ivy. He tries to fight Floronic Man. However, he was no match. He was thrown off to the bark of a tree and lost his tooth in the process. Floronic Man then captured Frank and Ivy and was going to execute them. However, Harley Quinn runs through the school looking for the remains of Jason. She entered a room where the students were having a sex experiment. She eventually found a room where Jason's body was lying on the floor. She picks up a chainsaw and begins to cut him to pieces. Meanwhile, Floronic Man was about to end Ivy when suddenly he began to loose his arms and other parts of his body. Ivy and Frank became free. Floronic Man awakens and tries to stop Harley. However, Harley used a chainsaw and she killed him. Ivy also awakens and goes to meet Harley. They embraced each other, and suddenly, the robots came into the room. The robots used a laser beam to transport them into a cage where they were being watched by Brainiac. The episode 4 takes us back to the origin of Brainiac. His name was Vril, and he to possess a level 12 intelligence, the highest in the galaxy. He lived on the planet Kalu with his wife and son Vril too. He was together with his family when he had a call from his superior. He excused himself to take the call from Mr. Star. Vril was given a mission to acquire a material from the planet Bryac. The gun had the power to reduce the size of any organic and inorganic material. He was to set off on his mission the next day. Brainiac went home to his wife. He puts on some music, and they danced along. He informs her about his last mission to retrieve the material from the planet Bryac, and he would be leaving the following day. Vril was ready to embark on his mission. His son gave him a subsidizing core, which he made by himself as a parting gift. Vril got on the ship as his family waved him goodbye. Vril was thrilled to see the monkey Coco had sneaked on board. He then set out in search of the planet Bryac. On arrival, Vril deployed the drones to search for the material. After finding it, he retrieved the material through a laser into his ship. He then set the ship to transport him back to his planet. Vril arrived at Kalu, only to discover the whole planet has been destroyed and become non-viable. He searched around but couldn't transmit any message. He stumbled on his wife's body and realized the whole planet had become inanimate. Vril became angry at himself for not predicting the possibility of this outcome. Filled with rage, he swore to fight against every imperfection in the galaxy, and he drifted into the cosmos. He arrived at the planet Krypton. He realized the planetary core was unstable and was doomed to be destroyed. He then deployed his drones into city to make the imperfections become stable at 100%. However, at that moment, a thought came into his mind. He took the material given to him by his son and infused it to the laser gun he acquired from the planet Bryac. With these, Vril was able to freeze the center of the planet and extract it from its core. He brought it on board and sealed it in a jar. He began collecting several different worlds through the galaxy. And that was how Brainiac was born. Then one day he came across Earth. He discovered Earth was the most uncivilized planet he ever came across, and thinks it to be the challenge he has been hoping for. He then deployed the drones into the city. Back to the present, Harley and Ivy were trapped in the laser cell. Brainiac went through their files but couldn't find any data on Harley. He zapped Ivy to sleep and teleports Harley into his domain. Harley could see Coco's skeleton laying by the side. He tells Harley she was an invariable beyond comprehension and must be eliminated. Brainiac was about to eliminate Harley when Lena Luthor appeared to stop him. She tells him to remember their agreement where she takes care of the humans, while he takes care of everything else. Brainiac eventually agreed to release the girls. He sent Harley and Ivy back to the hotel room. Harley awakened feeling kind of off and doesn't remember ordering the food. She felt like she was in a trance.